In this video, I'll be attempting to beat every single Khazan, the first Berserker boss, with the dual blades. Now, all of this was streamed live right here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe so you can watch all of the action live. We begin our adventure at Mount Hindmarsh. Bruised, beaten, and battered, eventually I stumbled over to the Blade Nexus, and here I would obtain my dual blades. For anyone that doesn't know, the Blade Nexus acts as a checkpoint in the level, meaning if I die, I'd return back to my most recently activated Blade Nexus. It also acts as a place to level up and even return back to the crevice at any time once the crevice is unlocked. With Khazan being a Souls-like game, if at any point you die, you lose all your Lacrima, which is the currency in this game. It is the same as gold from Elden Ring or souls from Dark Souls. I continue to work my way through Hindmarsh, collecting armor and items that help me defeat the bosses. I did get stuck at one point with a stagger resistance practice area. For some reason, I struggled a lot here and a lot of deaths were had here. I eventually managed to defeat the heavy soldier, but I spent a solid 15 minutes dying over and over again to this soldier. Thankfully, after defeating the soldier, it was smooth sailing until I came face to face with my first boss, the Yatuga. This fight would give me my first taste of what was to come. From high damaging hits to the lack of stamina I had, this fight felt impossible. I did start off solid though, getting some nice heavy hits in on the Yeti and even a few brutal attacks when I could drain stamina enough. But sadly, it wasn't enough, and I eventually ended up dying. This would continue to be a very common factor among the boss fights. Because of my low damage and low stamina levels, it almost felt like I was slapping a gorilla with a wet napkin. Eventually, I managed to get the run I had been waiting for. With each attack, the Yeti's health fell bit by bit, and finally, it felt like my wet napkin was actually doing something. Eventually, with enough hits and enough brink guards, I managed to defeat my first boss of Khazan. Khazan would pass out and get saved by some mounted people. They were aware of Khazan's possession by the Blade Phantom and told him he needed to climb a mountain and complete trials. That's exactly what I did. The first trial was the sword trial. I grabbed the sword and used it to kill off some small enemies and quickly realized I hated the sluggishness of this weapon. Thankfully, this isn't a beat all bosses with a sword. I finished the sword trial and the next trial was the spear trial. This spear is notoriously the best weapon in Khazan. Too bad I won't be using it for long. I grabbed the spear and killed off the spear soldier, leaving me with only one more trial, the dual blades trial. I grabbed the dual blades and challenged the Shadow Khazan, and everything was going great. Until it wasn't. I worked my way back up there and died yet again. Okay, this is the one. I worked my way up there yet again, and this time I beat the trial. With all trials completed, I'd climb my way up the mountain until making it to the top. Here I would now get to fight the Blade Phantom. This fight would be the first real skill check of the game. Not only does the Blade Phantom hit harder than the Yeti boss, it also has lots more attacks, and my wet napkin of a weapon now felt more like I was throwing tissues at the Blade Phantom. My first attempt at this fight, however, went pretty well, with me doing solid damage and even managing to push the Phantom into its second stage. But this is where the fight would change directions. All of the boss's attacks changed, and now I need to remember a new set of attacks. And as you can probably guess, I ended up dying. With each failed attempt though, I learnt the Phantom's moves better, and I realized a flaw in how I was approaching the fight. I was attempting this boss like a 100-meter sprint. I was going all out at the start and taking unnecessary damage, instead of treating it like a marathon and being patient and playing the long game. Once I had this figured out, my attempts got better, and eventually I managed to defeat the Blade Phantom. With the Blade Phantom defeated, I unlocked the crevice. I now decided to go and complete the side mission, Phantom of Combat. All you do here is defeat another Phantom. I entered the boss arena and was now fighting Keshta, the Unyielding. Thankfully, this fight isn't too bad. Keshta's attacks are very slow, but once you get the hang of brink blocking and you find the openings to attack him in, this fight becomes a cakewalk, taking me only 3 attempts. With Keshta's defeat, I returned back to the crevice and activate him. Keshta is the Phantom I'd run for the rest of this challenge, because he increases stamina recovery rate, making him easily one of the best spirits. I now headed into the mission, Forgotten Temple. This is my first encounter with the undead. These guys can get very annoying, as you need to defeat them once and then whilst they are bones on the ground, you need to hit them again to destroy them. For the beginning of this mission, all you mainly do is kill undead soldiers and run up a hill, until finally making it to the temple. Once there, I push open the big doors, and here is where I would now be introduced to the Dragonkin. Yet again, another enemy type. I fought my way through them, dying a few times, but eventually I was introduced to a character named Defrona. She'd be important for me to be able to get true Berserker endings later on, but for now, I continued on killing more Dragonkin and undead, and I even defeated an elite enemy. Another enemy I defeated on my way to the boss was the Revenant of Adversary. These fights are a bit difficult until you get used to them, but they aren't classified as boss fights, so I killed the Adversary off and kept working my way to the boss. Thankfully, not too long after beating the Adversary, I found the next boss. I entered through the doors and ran down a long pathway until finally dropping into the arena. This boss was a Dragonkin named Viper. Now Viper had some quick attacks but didn't seem to do that much damage at this point. I thought this boss would be easy, but after dying on my first attempt, I was informed that I had missed a Netherworld energy, which gave me my 4th heal. So I made sure to go back and grab that before continuing with the fight. After a few attempts at the boss, I managed to finally get a pretty good run. I learned Viper's attacks and all that was left to do was to defeat him. The first phase went really well, with me using none of my heal. I was starting to become more comfortable with using the dual blades and was getting better at understanding what attack combos I could use and when to use them. Once Viper was in his second phase, this fight would start to get tricky. Not because of the boss's damage or heavy attacks, but more due to all the particles flying around the screen. From the snow to the lightning, every attack the boss would throw at me was really hard to see. And then to add even more wood to the fire, after doing enough damage to the boss, the entire room would go dark. And you would now need to time your blocks perfectly, whilst only being able to see Viper's eyes. This made it hard to fight him, but thankfully, even with all of these challenges, I managed to defeat Viper. The next mission would be the first act of revenge. In this mission, you're located in the Froth village. Here, I need to battle my way through tons of enemies. Nothing new, not too much happens in this mission. The only real things of note were that the mission sucks. Not only are there Dragonkins that just like to keep hitting you and don't stop and don't get stunned, for a section of the mission, you're just surrounded by water. And for some reason, the great General Khazan can't swim. Besides that, there was one elite enemy. This enemy was yet again another Dragonkin. This one wielded a spear. Not only did it do lightning damage, which would mess with my stamina if it fully procced me, it also just did crazy damage. Thankfully, I managed to defeat it and move on. Eventually, I managed to make it to the top of the village, and here is where my boss fight would be. I pushed open the giant doors and entered the building. Here, I was introduced to yet again another character of importance, Elaine, but we would deal with her later. For now, I needed to fight the boss called Volbano. This creature pretty much looked like Krampus on roids. Not only did this creature carry around a giant hammer, but it also carried around a giant metal stake, which it would sometimes set on fire and cause burn damage with. Or it'd slam into the ground, causing an AoE effect. This wouldn't have been an issue besides for the fact a part of the dual blades combo you launch into the air. Whilst in the air, you can't do anything, meaning you're a sitting duck. A lot of this fight was about learning when and when not to use my combo attacks. Thankfully, I got the hang of the boss fight pretty quickly and started to come up with ways to predict and even evade its attacks. This allowed for me to eventually defeat the boss. However, I was easily 2 hits away from death. Now that I had Froth Village done, I unlocked 2 side quests. I decided to first do Night of Tragedy. For this mission, I'd head over to the haunted village of Bangao. Here, I'd now run my way through the village fighting undead. Because this mission is a side quest, not a lot happens here. I collected some soul stones, defeated some enemies, and even challenged an elite enemy. However, this elite enemy was a bear, and they have very simple parry and counter-attack windows. Eventually, I'd make it to the end of the mission. Here, I'd face the Spectre of Bangao. This Spectre is literally just Volbano, but with a different name. So I defeated this boss really easily, because I already knew the moveset from the previous fight. Moving on from Night of Tragedy, I'd go on and complete the side quest Jar Enthusiast. Literally, all this mission is running around a village and grabbing 6 jars. There's no boss fight, no real difficult enemies besides for the assassins, which for some reason managed to grab me every single time. And I mean every single time. Besides for that, there was no real challenge, so I grabbed all the jars and moved on. Next up was Strange Stench and Scope Cave. Scurfer Cave is your first experience with the spiders. Not only are these little menaces pains in the ass, they come in all different shapes and sizes, as you'll see. The goal for Scurfer Cave is to light the barrel bombs, closing the spiders' entrances, blocking them out. That's exactly what I did. I lighted the first barrel bomb and closed a cave entrance. On my way to the second barrel bomb, I was introduced to the remnant enemy. These creatures cause plague when they hit you. If they fully proc plague on me, I ended up with a DOT effect that does tons of damage, and without the potion to remove it, I needed to make sure I didn't get plagued. After finding my way through an entire remnant army, I finally made it to the second barrel bomb. I'd light up and destroy another cave entrance. On my way to the third one, I was introduced to the demons. These guys are easy to defeat, so they pose no real threat. Finally, after dealing with an elite enemy spider, I made it to my final barrel bomb. I set it off and headed for the boss room. Once making it to the boss room, I entered. Whilst Elamain freed some guy from some webs, we ended up getting snuck up on by this boss. This creature was known as the Aratra. Not only could this boss inflict loads of poison damage, it could also slow you down with webs, and destroy you with its massive leg. A massive part of Khazan fights with dual blades is understanding the fact that you can't instantly stun bosses like you can with the spear or sword. Not only do you need to be aggressive enough to do damage and not let the fight drag on too long, you also need to be ready to defend and hit counterattacks at any given moment, so you don't lose too much health. Now, thankfully this boss has one major weakness, that the dual blades can abuse. Usually a boss has one part of their body you can break, stun them. The Aratra has multiple, allowing for easy stun damage, and because of the dual blades combos, destroying these body parts were easy. This is how I ended up defeating the Aratra, by simply going absolutely insane on its body parts. And whenever it would try to run away, I'd get lucky enough to stun it, by yet again destroying another body part. After going insane on the spider, I finally managed to defeat it. Even with the spider defeated, I need to return back into the caves in the mission Spider's Tomb, also I could retrieve the blacksmith's hammer. The enemies that were in this mission were primarily beast enemies, none too difficult or dangerous, but at this point in time, I still only had 4 heals, so I still need to be careful. I fought my way through the cave until finally making it to the boss. This boss was a giant bear named Various. Like I said earlier in the video, bears have really easy moves to parry and counterattack. This boss wasn't much of a challenge. I ended up dealing with it really quickly, allowing for me to head up and talk to Henji, completing the mission. I turned back to the crevice and talked to the blacksmith. I'd now be able to make sets of armor and potions. These would be very important for later fight. I was now finally done with the first portal and moved on to the second one. Here, my first mission would be a trader reveal. This mission has you in the Palmian Citadel. I talked to Elamain and she asked me a few questions. I move on. Most of this mission consists of you just running through the town and killing enemies. I did run to an elite enemy and died to him, but I later returned and got my revenge. Eventually, I made my way inside the main building, and here the same process would repeat, killing low tier soldiers, then running into an elite enemy and defeating it. Eventually, I ran to Adele. He told me about the boss I'd be facing, but like usual, I skipped through his dialogue. After a bit more travel, I finally came face to face with the boss room doors. I entered inside, and I saw Tristan getting his ass kicked by the boss, Rankus. Rankus by far was the most difficult boss for me. I don't know why, for some reason I struggled to remember his moves, making it really hard to defeat him. I was also still getting used to some of my keys, so I had a few times where I misclicked and that ended up costing me my life. Time and time again, I entered through that boss room door, hoping for a different outcome. But no matter what I did, I always ended up back at that door. Until finally, I managed to get a good run. I was countering his attacks and dealing decent damage because of how long I had spent challenging this boss. I'd finally managed to pick up on his moves. I stayed calm and I used my heals sparingly, and finally managed to land the killing blow, ending my suffering from Rankus. After defeating Rankus, I talked to Tristan and he told me about what had happened. I then moved to the next region. I'd now be in Nadine Quarry. I talked to Tristan and continued on. Nothing of note really happened in this mission. I opened some chests, killed some elite enemies, and before I knew it, I was up to the boss. This boss was Malusha. Now, even though this isn't an intimidating name, his special ability was in his second phase, he'd cause chaos. Now, chaos wasn't like any other debuff. Instead of damaging you over time, it would lower the amount of health you had with a purple bar. Any hits landing with Chaos after the debuff was active would continue to drop your health further. This meant that not only did I need to try and get decent combos in, but I needed to try not to get hit at all. Because the Chaos alone could wipe me off the map, Militia also seemed to be just amazing at blocking attacks, which meant my usual strategies weren't going to work, and I need to rely more on my blocks and counterattacks to deal damage to this boss. This boss did take a few hours, because even though I had grabbed more memories and leveled up a bit, he still just hit very hard. Eventually though, I managed to beat him, and the Blade Phantom told me a story, and I talked to Elamain and moved on. I'd now do the 2 side missions in Nadine Quarry, the first one being Human's Islands, and the second one being Final Conquest. The reason I put these side missions together is because both are very similar in the sense of all you do is run through an area you have been before and defeat enemies and an elite enemy until finally making it to the boss. For the mission Human's Islands, the boss is a dragonkin named Zaldan. There wasn't much to say here. It wasn't hard to beat him with dual blades due to the fact that his attacks were the exact same as the boss Viper from earlier in the game, making it a quick and easy victory. Now the second boss was Mutated Silence. This is the same boss from the previous side mission, just now he's mutated and uses attacks from Viper's second phase. I did die here once, but after that, I dealt with the boss like really quickly. By now, you probably noticed I didn't mention the mission Silent Temple, because you don't fight a boss, and I also didn't want to relive the horrors of fighting a tank of a soldier and a mage that wouldn't stop shooting fireballs at the same time. So yeah, that's that. Just know yes, I did beat the Spectre Mage and Spectre Knight. Alright, now the next mission, Deserted Village, is easily one of the saddest and longest missions. So to make this quick, Khazan is adventuring with Elamain. We get to see some scenes of their travels till they make it to El Ravakar. We walk through the main door, Elamain goes ahead and gets sucked into a chaos portal. Our goal now is to find her. This entire mission is spent fighting your way through the main building, killing enemies, and trying to collect soul stones and memories, but also deactivate switches to free Elamain from the device she is trapped in. Once Elamain is free, we now enter our next boss fight, which sadly is with Elamain. In this fight, Elamain has an electric sword and shield she can activate at any time. Like before, if electrocution proc, my stamina would get messed up, and in this fight, that was almost guaranteed death. Thankfully, throughout the entire fight, most of Elamain's attacks stayed the same. From her charge attack with her shield to just chasing me around with an electrocuted sword. Another thing that made this fight hard was, like previous bosses, she was good at blocking my attacks, meaning I would rely on light attacks and lunge attacks to drain her stamina, allowing for me to do brutal attacks. The dual blades made this easy with their quick light attack combos and dash attacks, and thankfully after figuring out these strategies, Elamain was defeated. We watch the chaos take over her body and lose control. As she dies, her body turns to ash. We find out that her soul was destroyed, and not even Lord Charon would be able to bring her back. The next mission is Pavel's Final Words. In this mission, Khazan is hunting down the last of the Nice Vale in Palmian. He spent this mission running through the Forgotten Underground Canal, defeating creatures and soldiers along the way. He also ended up fighting 2 different elite enemies, one of which actually gave me a challenge. I didn't die to the elite enemy, it just didn't go down straight away like the others. After beating the second elite enemy, I'd finally made it to the boss. Brinkus was yet again another fight that ran off the same mechanics as a previous fight. But in this case, it was the fight I dreaded the most, Rankus. Thankfully, after all the hours I'd put into the Rankus fight, I was quite familiar with the attacks. Even though I had beaten Rankus quite a while back, Rankus did beat me once and I was worried that I was about to relive the pain of the Rankus fight. But thankfully, on the second attempt, I managed to defeat Brinkus while still having 3 heals ready to use. After defeating Brinkus, I started the mission Inconceivable Truth in the London Mine. For this mission, you are trying to save Yulian from the mine. Yet again, this is another mission where all you do is kill enemies and work your way from room to room. But during this time, I grew more confident using the dual blades. I need to be really good with them if I want any chance at not only beating Ozma with them, but also Hisma. But that's talk for later. For now, I worked my way through the linen mine, killing enemies and climbing up floors. This mission was really easy, due to the fact enemies were weak, low tier enemies. Finally, after climbing up enough ladders to make you feel like you were in a ladder simulator, I managed to get to the top of the mine and challenge the boss to save Yuli. The boss was a giant messed up creature known as the Shackleton. This creature not only loved to try to grab me, but would also constantly keep attacking, giving you barely any time to recover stamina. So I need to rely heavily on ring blocks, so I could hold onto as much of my stamina as possible. I did die a few times because no matter how good the dual blades are, they still don't do a lot of damage. Mainly relying on combo damage, which is hard to get in on a boss that attacks extremely quick. The amount of times I got grabbed by this guy because I was in the middle of a combo was insane. And I started to get really mad. That's so fucking stupid! Oh my fucking god, I tried to perfect block it and I just can't. But finally, I managed to defeat the Shakuga, bringing my pain of infinite grab attacks to an end. Thankfully, Yulian was alive and we managed to rescue it. Next up was the side mission, Why Have You Forsaken Us? In this mission, you're going through a research facility to find out more about what Ozma was planning. Because a lot of the missions consist of the same things for the most part, the mission overviews will become quite quick and I will mainly talk about the boss fights from now on. This mission has you running through the research facility. For the most part, it's filled with undead, but does have some spiders and other creatures. At one point in time, you need to fight a giant spider and a mutated one, which can make for a very annoying fight, as they both do solid damage and are both really tanky. Eventually, after flicking some switches and running through more rooms, you make it to the boss. This boss is yet again another repeat fight. This boss was called the Complete Yerid. As you can probably guess by now, most side missions have you refight bosses you've already challenged, but it's either their final form or a messed up failed version. But either which way, like usual, this boss consisted of all the same attacks. Usually, I'd have a little bit of a tough time readjusting to previous fights. But because I had literally just defeated this boss less than an hour before, its moveset and timing were still in my head, making for an easy victory. I will say something that the dual blades did very well. Whenever a boss would get stunned or staggered, their combo was quick enough to allow you to hit a few times before either getting away or hitting the brutal hit. After defeating the Complete Yerid, Khazan learns the story of how it was made and gets a glimpse into what Ozma was doing. I now decide to return back to Linen Mines and complete its side mission, escaping Linen Mine. According to Yulian, there are still men in the mine that need to be saved. One of them is even his brother Adric. So, being the great guy I am, I decided to help Yulian. So I headed back into the mines, which was now infested with spiders. I fought my way through all of the spiders until I made it to the same boss room I versed the Shatuka in. And for some reason, the boss was a Yatura. So just another overgrown Yeti. The Yaturic boss fight was pretty easy for the most part. However, it definitely didn't go as smooth as I was hoping. Because I challenged this style of boss previously, I thought it would be easy, but I forgot about a few of its moves. Firstly, it's giant ice slam that you need to dodge through, because you can't block it. And secondly, it's sprint attack. This attack, you can usually get the boss to run to a wall and stun itself, but sadly I wasn't able to do this at all because I just kept forgetting to do it. Thankfully, even with all these skill issues, I managed to beat the Yachirak and saved Julian's brother, but the other soldiers weren't there. They'd been captured and taken away. The final mission for Linen Mines was Last Command. This mission has me fighting enemies at the top of the mine, trying to work my way to the captured soldiers. I killed enemy after enemy, but sadly, I was too late. All of them had been killed by some general and his soldiers. I now need to face 2 soldiers first, but once they both were defeated, the real boss came in, Daajjeey. Thankfully, this boss acts the same way as every other soldier, making it super easy to defeat him. To be honest, there isn't much to say about this fight. I used brutal attacks and the dual blade combo attacks to pretty much stun lock the boss and bully him, until I finally put an end to his life. With the last command completed, I was finally up to the 3rd portal. Here, my first mission would be Witch's Castle. This mission is a really long mission, and I mean really long. It took me an hour to get up to the boss fight. It is you mainly running through the town, killing enemies, and finding a way into the castle. But because it is so long, I'm going to skip straight to the boss fight instead of boring you with the same details that are in every mission. The boss was Troker, a Apparently, she never liked Khazan, but was in love with Ozma. But oh well, none of that will matter when I kick her ass. I was warned that this fight sucked and there is a chance I'd be at this fight for a couple of streams, but I was determined not to be stuck here. There was just one major issue with that idea. I didn't have freeze resistant potions or cleansers, which meant if I had it blocked on me, the only way I'd be able to get rid of freeze would be to keep moving around, burning through my stamina. But I wasn't going to give up. Luckily for me, Kroka's moves were incredibly easy to read, allowing for me to learn how to block them and even figured out a way to force her to go for a charge attack at the beginning of the fight that I could then counter and do major damage. Obviously, because this boss has some long range attacks, my little close range blades weren't that amazing, but that didn't stop me. With each slash and each dodge, I dealt more and more damage, until finally I managed to beat Kroka. The same night, I was told it might take multiple streams. The next mission I did was called Lacrima. This fight has you running through the lake city yet again and defeating enemies, until finally getting to a dead end where you challenge the boss, named Failed Creation. I'd like to say this fight was hard or something, but it wasn't. The worst part of it was just the fact that the boss loved putting fire everywhere. And I mean everywhere. But that wasn't going to stop me. So I defeated it, and that was another boss down. After Failed Creation was the side mission, Unrequited Love. This mission is entirely about finding out what happened to Tristan's love, Lydia, after she had suspiciously died. Yet again, this is another mission where I run through a different part of Lake City until coming face to face with the boss Guido. Turns out he kidnapped Lydia because he was madly in love with her, so much so that he believed she would eventually fall for him. But when she didn't, he killed her. The Guido fight was extremely easy due to the fact that it was just a side boss, and none of his attacks were that hard to block. With Guido defeated, Tristan learnt the truth and was devastated but could finally start healing. After killing Guido, the next mission I did was Valis' Axe. I'm not going to talk about this mission at all, as it doesn't actually have a boss with a big health bar, just a failed experiment and a scorpion creature at the end. The next mission is Hermit Mountain. Kroka was looking for a dark elf for Ozma. It's now up to me to find her to learn more about what's going on. This mission is a unique one. You make it to the boss ball and find out you need to defeat the creatures in 3 other portals before you can enter into the boss fight. The first portal I entered in had an elite icon. I defeated it quickly with my dual blade combos. The next portal had an elite renowned warrior's shadow. These guys hit hard, but they are easy to counter, allowing for me to easily defeat this elite enemy. The third and final portal had a giant elite pincer spider. I decided to try and complete the challenge associated with this enemy, so I defeated it entirely by using blocks and brutal attack. With those 3 defeated, I was now up to the final boss. I entered through the boss portal and was faced with Beleriand, the dark elf. She thought I was one of Ozma's resurrected soldiers, so we began to fight. There was 2 moves that she would use that made me want to smash my head into a wall. And those attacks were her ability to put a bubble around herself, making me do pretty much no damage until I destroyed the bubble, and her ability to summon troops, and the Reaper. She'd absolutely spam the shit out of these guys, making me take so much damage and ruining some of my best attempts. Eventually, I was able to counter these and got used to their attack. I managed to beat Beleriand, but this fight definitely took a major toll on me and my confidence in my skill. The next mission was Atlanti the Precise. One of Beleriand's spirits had been devoured by the Reaper, and she has now asked me to deal with it. This is just a mission where you pretty much run through the same areas you previously ran through to get to Beleriand, and you fight the Reaper. Because I had already fought the Reaper in the Beleriand boss fight, I absolutely clapped this boss. Now that I was done helping Beleriand, I received word from Tristan and started the mission Corruptor's Fortress. In this mission, you're running around Vass's gate, killing enemies and working your way towards where you think Khazan's loyal soldier Scalpel is. The only issue I had working my way to Scalpel was one singular elite enemy that dealt tons of plague damage from pretty much one hit. I already had plague procced on me. It was terrible. I'd block and get plagued. I would dodge and get plagued. This elite enemy sucked. Finally, after a bit of rage and some strong fighting words, I managed to defeat the elite enemy and head to the boss room where Scalpel was. Scalpel was a boss fight where the dual blades shine. He is a 2-phase boss fight, but that didn't phase me too much. Now the reason I say the dual blades shine here is because of, yet again, their combo speed. Like for me to get a full combo in before walking behind Scalpel and doing a high damage brutal attack. This made his first phase easy to defeat. His second phase, however, wasn't so easy. This is due to the fact that not only is Scalpel extremely aggressive, but he now uses long range attacks more often, making it very difficult to get in and do combos with the dual blades. Now a key part of phase 2 is that Scalpel's health slowly drains itself away, meaning that realistically, I could have just ran around dodging his attacks trying to outlast him, but I wasn't going to do that, and finally after a few attempts at this boss, I managed to beat Scalpel. The first mission was Crimson Trace. Literally all I did in this mission was run back down the main bridge of Vassar Gate, killing enemies until finally making it to the end and killing off a mutated Rosha. This fight did kinda suck, as it was one of the mutated bosses I hate because of its damage and ability to slow you in its webs. But it stood no chance against me and my dual blades. Next was the side mission Last Sentinel. I spent the mission yet again running through another section of Vassar Gate, killing enemies until making it to the boss room. But in this case, I don't verse a boss. I end up needing to defeat 2 twisted mages. Thankfully, I managed to keep them separated for the most part by using the statue. This allowed me to challenge them one at a time, which turned this from a boss fight to just a regular encounter. Now the final side mission is easily the most important one. This mission is called Transcendental Sword. The reason this mission is so important is because it's one of the requirements to get the true ending of the First Berserker. So I needed to do this mission. There are 2 fights in this mission. One being with the main guy defending the sword. This enemy is able to shapeshift his weapon, allowing for multiple different attacks, meaning I need to be careful. However, this didn't phase me too much. This second fight, however, was with the remnants of Element. The Blade Phantom did warn me that the sword would call forth my past and my regrets, but this was just cruel. I fought Element yet again, and after putting her down for the second time, the sword was now mine. The next mission was Strange Melody. Located at the Rebellion Imperial Theater, you spend most of the mission running up the floors of the theater, killing enemies and trying to work your way to the main hall. I did end up encountering a few elite enemies, but they were dealt with quickly. Once making it to the main hall, we are introduced to Princess Liliana. This fight is 100% on the more difficult end of boss fights. Not only are her attacks quick, they can be very hard to counter, especially the attack where Chaos Orbs get launched around the arena. Khazan's movement can make it hard to dodge these orbs, and they do tons of damage and also cause chaos. However, the redeeming factor of this fight is the fact that the boss has a really easy counterattack, allowing lots of chances to do damage. This fight felt a lot like Choker's fight, having an easy counter but some attacks that just felt impossible to dodge. But like the Choker fight, I was able to use light combos to stun the princess and in the end, defeat her. I now yet again had another 2 side missions to complete. Because we're getting close to the end of the game, I'm going to only really talk about the boss in these side missions, unless the mission is important. Alright, perfect, let's do this. The first side mission is Remnants of Chaos. The boss you end up fighting at the end of this mission is called the 99th Owl. The only thing that makes this fight difficult is the fact that you're in a small corridor that has low tier enemies running around trying to kill you, whilst this fat ass creature tries to sit on your face by leaping at you. But as long as you deal with the small enemies and dodge the boss's attacks so you don't get chaos procced on you, it's a really simple fight. The second side mission is also called Remnants of Chaos. For the boss for this mission is a Saint of Sin called Tanya. Because I versed Saint of Sins before, this fight wasn't hard. The attacks were really easy to dodge or block, and when you stun this type of enemy, it ends up being stuck on the ground for ages, allowing for you to do loads of damage, which meant this fight was over real quick. With all of these main missions and side missions done, I'd finally unlocked the final portal. The first mission is called Fall of the Empire, located in the capital city of Vitaline. Now, you spend most of this mission, like usual, fighting enemies and working your way through sections. But there is only one part of this mission that anyone cares about, and that is the battle with Hisma, the Berserker Dragon. Now, I was warned that this fight might be a struggle for me because of the dual blades, and I would just like to quickly say to one of my mods, Goku, that bro, I told you I would kick his ass with the dual blades, and that's exactly what I did. Hisma took me a total of 3 tries. What was meant to be one of the most difficult bosses took me 3 tries. Now let that sink in. Has it sunk in yet? Perfect. Now at the Hizma fight, I learned very quickly that because of the dual blades having fuck all range, there was only certain times I could really do any damage to Hizma. And that was when he was stunned. This was because that was the only time his head was on the ground. Besides for that, it was almost impossible to do any damage to him. Because of the auto-lock targeting onto his head, which was so high up, I couldn't reach it. Another part of this fight I figured out very quickly was that I would need to play it quite slow. Not only did Hizma's attacks do a lot of damage, they could cause chaos, so I had to be extra careful. This meant that if I wasn't 100% sure I could dodge the attack or perfectly block it, I would just hold my block button and take the small amount of damage that came with it. Now because I had realized all this stuff in my first attempt, my second attempt, I got closer, and on my third attempt, I managed to finally do it. I defeated Hizma with dual blade. With Hizma defeated, I now had a whopping 3 side missions to complete. The first is the mission Disobedient. The boss you end up fighting in this mission is the Cursed Boreas. This boss is literally the exact same boss as the 99th Owl, so I easily defeated it. I will say that this is one part of the game that was very disappointing. A lot of the extra bosses you can fight are just regular enemies with more health, no new attacks or abilities, just the same enemy. It was kind of disappointing. The next mission was Charon's Chains. In this mission, I need to fight a total of 3 bosses in a row to obtain Charon's Chain. These bosses were the Jocko, the Tigron, and the Eratra. The first fight is the Jocko. I ended up defeating this boss the same way I've defeated all of them, by smashing the stone on its head that stuns it, and then going absolutely insane on it. This was the most consistent strategy I found to defeat the Jocko. The next boss was the Tigron. For the Tigron, I mainly relied on doing combos until it would go for its heavy attack. The Tigron was very easy to counter, making it a walk in the park. Now the final boss was the Eratra. I was confident going into this fight. I had 6 heals and had easily destroyed the previous 2 bosses. But oh boy was I wrong. This boss demolished me. I remembered that the way I originally defeated this boss was by stunning it by destroying its path. But I couldn't do that here, because it had no paths to destroy. So bit by bit, I took down its health. Eventually, I managed to defeat it, but by the end, I was left with only 1 heal. Turns out, the Blade Phantom had been a naughty boy in the past that had tried to overthrow Charon, and the chains had originally been used to stop him. So he wasn't a big fan when they got stabbed through him here. The next side mission is Birth of Evil. I spent the first part of this mission running around, killing chaos creatures until making it to the Noble's Manor. At the top of the manor, I challenged Gilson. The Gilson fight felt the exact same as fighting a regular soldier, just with a bit more health. Something interesting about the fight though, was the fact that I couldn't manage to stun lock him. He'd always get out of it. However, this didn't impact me too much, allowing for me yet again to defeat a boss really easy. My final side mission was the Vow. I worked my way through the passages and water sections until finally making it to the final side mission boss, the Spectre of Pluvius. The only difficult part about this fight is that the boss causes hallucination, which once procced reverses your keybinds. But because of the autolock system, this means nothing, allowing for the final side mission boss to fall quickly. I was now up to my second last mission. This mission is called Bloodied Sanctuary. You end up running around killing all sorts of enemies in this mission, working your way up the building, trying to make it to the sanctuary. This can get kind of confusing as there is multiple areas that have multiple pathways that you can take. Once you get the right way, you eventually make it up to the sanctuary. Here is where I'd verse my final boss before Ozma. This second last battle would be with Reese, the love of Ozma's life, his bride-to-be. Now the Reese fight is a really cool and fun fight, with some stunning visuals, but to be honest, it is also a really easy fight, not putting up too much of a challenge. She constantly attacks with the same attack patterns, and one of her moves where she makes light walls literally blocks her own attack. Meaning, you can stand behind one of those walls and she can't hit you. Now, her second phase isn't much harder than her first phase. The main difference, her attack speed is increased, and she now causes chaos. But besides for that, it's the same fight. I beat Reese the same way I beat most other bosses, using light attacks and lunge attacks to drain her stamina, then doing combo attacks, and then brutal attacking her. I end up rinsing and repeating this until finally I beat Reese, only one boss left. I was now up to the final mission where I would now finally be able to challenge Ozma. You spend the first part of the mission fighting your way through low to medium tier enemies until you make it to Defrone her. She asks you what you will do when you face Ozma. There's 3 options, but the one I selected was I must know the truth. This is so that I could get the true ending. After that, I continued working my way through the castle, completing some floating platform challenges, and getting clapped by a bat on those platforms. No, I won't show you the footage of that. Eventually, I made it to the final boss battle. I opened the door and got ready to fight. After the cutscene, I started to fight Ozma. To make this short, I lost my first attempt. I turned back to the crevice, made sure I had the full bloodthirsty fiend set, and did some attribute re-rolling to make sure I had the best stats. Thanks Marvo for helping me with this. And with all of that done, I was now ready to actually face Ozma, the Master of Chaos.
Why do you stubbornly refuse to understand?
With Ozma defeated, I'd finally managed to beat every single boss in the First Berserker Khazan with only the dual blades. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot and I appreciate it. And maybe consider watching the video up on your screen right now.
Khazan, I'm sorry. Ozma.